Don't think your video camera.
Attention, everybody. The views expressed on this show is not necessarily those of Acts Ministry, Acts Media Group, and or their affiliate. And I'm going to say that again, Dr. Paul.
All right, say it quick.
Attention, everybody. The views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of Acts Ministry, Acts Media Group, and or their affiliate and subordinate ministries and or nonprofits. It's that time again. It's the Happy Hour with your host, Dr. Paul Collins, and his lovely wife, Miss Nancy Collins. See who today's guest is. Coming up right now. Take it away, Dr. Paul.
Well. Hello, everybody. I'm the biggest clown in the circus. I'm the biggest clown in the house. How's that?
I know that's right.
This is Friday again. And interestingly enough,
that concludes our show.
It comes around every week at the same time. Right. And even though it comes around this same time every week, this time I'm not going to try to make it rhyme. There we go. Now, hello to everybody from the Happy Hour with Dr. Paul, old Dr. Paul, and sweet Miss Little Nancy. We are pleased to have a wonderful guest today, and you're going to enjoy every minute of the Happy Hour. Meanwhile, I have to greet my first secretary, Shirley Simpson, in St. Joseph, Missouri, the town that they call Joetown in St. Joe, and it's where the Pony Express started, and they still have a museum there about the Pony Express, and it's the town where Jesse James, hiding out under the name Mr. Howard, he was shot in the back by that dirty little coward Bob Ford. And so there's a song about Bob Ford, the dirty little coward who shot Mr. Howard and laid poor Jesse in his grave. Now, I've been telling that every week, so one of these days, somebody's going to get it. But anyway, it happened in St. Joe. That house is still there with the bullet hole left by the murder of Jesse James, otherwise known as Mr. Howard. Also, hello, Jerry Chambers. Oh, Jerry, how time flies. You were a teenager in my church in St. Joe. Now you're a retired school administrator over in Chesterfield, Missouri. Been retired for a while. Hello, Judy in Bryan, Texas, and Galen in Plato, Texas. Hello to the folks out in Lubbock, Texas, out there on the Cap Rock. You get out of Lubbock, you get off the Cap Rock, you can dig a hole. In Lubbock, you dig a hole 3 feet and you hit rock. And let's see. Well, people in France and Germany and Pakistan and Turkey, South America, and other places around the globe. Hello to all of you. If I could speak German, I would greet you in German. But all I know is Rausmittel. That's all I know.
Here it comes.
Here it comes. But French, hey, my friends in France. Il est très bonjour aujourd'hui, n'est-ce pas, mes amis? Comment allez-vous?
This is a travesty.
All right, enough of the happy hour. Now we'll be the real happy hour, Miss Nancy, because we're going to talk to Greg Burris. Now, Greg has been around Springfield for a while and held some very notable positions, and he's currently in a very notable position. He is currently the president and CEO of United Way, a major deal. Greg, welcome to the happy hour.
Thank you, Dr. Paul.
I like that input you had early on. and that concludes our show. I caught it.
Yeah.
All right, Greg.
Timing is everything.
That's right. Where did you come from, anyway?
I grew up in Springfield and then Nixa. So I've been in this area pretty much my entire life. I was born in California, but moved here when I was 3 years old, so I don't remember anything in California.
Well, that's
and
a
I have lived here since then. Went to school at Missouri State University, worked there 25 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Became city manager, was city manager for 10 years, failed at retirement, and now I am president and CEO of United Way of the Ozarks.
See, the only problem I have with your story is the veracity about Nixa. Anybody that's native around here that lived here, it's Nixie.
Yeah.
And that's like people from Ava. They're really from Avie. And then people from Aurora, no, they're from Aurora.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to talk.
It's like Missouri versus Missouri.
That's right.
Wouldn't it be Aurora, according to the logic of Nixie?
No, Aurora. Aurora.
Aurora.
Aurora. You got to get it just right.
Aurora
Come on,
Borealis.
Matthew. If you're a station manager, learn how to say this. Aurora.
And that concludes our show.
Yes.
Greg Burris, ladies and gentlemen. He'll be here all week.
Now, what did you do at
Tip
Missouri?
your waiters and waitresses.
What did you do before Missouri State?
I was a student. I was a college student learning computer programming, and Missouri State University hired me right out of college. They hired me before I graduated. I became a computer programmer.
That's awesome.
Worked there. I thought I would work there maybe for 2 or 3 years. At that time, computer programming was hot, and you could go pretty much anywhere you wanted in the country. And so I thought, well, I'll work here for 2 or 3 years, get some good experience, and then go somewhere else. Never left. Stayed there, retired from the university as a vice president. The last major project I was involved in was the design and construction of JQH Arena.
That's a big one.
And it's a big one, and they don't teach you that in computer programming class.
No. You. That's like I went to college and I went to seminary, and 3 years in seminary, they never taught you all the things that you needed to know.
Yeah.
All that grueling time spent commuting and sitting in class and.
What higher education teaches you is how to learn.
Hopefully, because
you learn to learn.
Yeah, that's what I used. I taught at OTC for 10 years, and I used to tell the students, I can't teach you anything except how to learn.
Yep.
Then you have to teach yourself. Anyway, I find your career fascinating. You haven't known me really until this opportunity came along for us to meet you in one of the local restaurants here, back before the quarantine closures. But I had met you before that at South Street National Avenue Christian Church.
Okay.
There was some kind of a meeting, and Nancy and I attended during the day, dozens of people, and you were there. And I don't remember what it was about, but we went representing Acts Ministry at that time.
Probably addressing poverty in the community.
Could be. Anyway, I have followed your career through the news media, and I found it fascinating. I always admire people that seem to recognize a ladder that they can climb or use it parallel or horizontal to the ground, rather. A ladder is a ladder. And I've watched what you've done in this community. I think it's marvelous. After how many, 20-some years at Missouri?
25 years at Missouri State University, yeah.
And then whatever in the world inspired you to think about being a city manager?
It was not on my radar screen, I will tell you that. When the city manager position came open in the community, there were some community leaders who approached me at that time and said, why don't you throw your hat in the ring? And I said, why would anybody want to do that job? Nothing but criticism. I thought about it, and my wife actually is the one who talked me into applying and said, you ought to apply for that. So I applied and became one of the finalists. Became a rather controversial selection at the time because I was up against 2 longtime city managers from other communities.
Right.
I had never done the job.
Wow.
So all I had been is a vice president at a university. And so, city council took a chance on this, relatively young city manager to run the 3rd largest city in the state.
That's right.
And I'm so appreciative that they took a chance on me, and the only thing I did really was put together a great team. The legacy that you tend to leave in any organization is the team that you put together.
That's right.
And if you look at what Clay Goddard is doing as the director of health in our community, he was one of my staff, one of my team that I promoted into that position. And so I continue to see the results of these people as they have an impact on our community.
I remember when I think in general terms, not in Springfield, I'm way back. I'm from north central Missouri originally.
Nobody's perfect. It's
That's
okay.
true. Yeah, not everybody can't be born in California and have their parents have enough brains to move when they're 3. I was born and raised up in Randolph County, and it seems to me I recall when city managers were invented.
Yeah.
And when it hit my hometown of Moberly, a lot of folks thought this was about the most ridiculous thing they'd ever heard of. What's wrong with having the mayor and city council? They've been doing this job for years, and So why do we need a city
Why do we
manager?
need professional management?
Right, yeah. So city managers, of course, I'm not a kid anymore, but relatively speaking, the city manager form of government is on the new side.
It is. It really is.
Now, is there a step beyond that we could look forward to? Something that would supersede, of course, we know we have city administrators that basically about the same.
Same thing.
But do you foresee some kind of a step forward, at least what they think will be a step forward?
I don't, and so I'm a little biased, having been a city manager. But we have a lot of communities that still don't even have professional management, that still operate based on elected officials, and so you have what's called a strong mayor form of government.
Right.
The problem I see with strong mayor is that politics enters into everything.
Mm-hmm.
The advantage you have with a city manager or a professional management is that person is supposed to take the politics out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you report to elected officials, and so I had 9 elected bosses.
Right.
But the idea is that I can run the organization as, people say we want government to run like a business. Well,
Right.
there's a couple of problems with that. You probably don't want me to run it as a business, or there's a whole lot of services that would just go away.
That's right. That's right.
But you do want it professionally run. You do want to have accountability, you want transparency, and you want to make sure you take the politics out of it. And this is nothing regarding our elected officials. We happen to be blessed in Springfield and Greene County by having elected officials that work well together. Politics doesn't really enter into it, but there's a lot of communities where it does. And it becomes very highly politicized. And so you might have a community where the mayor says, you know who ought to be public works director? My brother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe has no experience, but needs a job. And so that's a pretty
Well, it's
random example, but it does happen.
It has happened.
And the idea of professional management is it takes that layer out of the way, and so you're relying on somebody who is going to operate the government in a respected, unbiased manner.
Well, it is a business. The city is a business, but it's a different
type of business.
Different type of business. Mm-hmm. It is not your typical nonprofit, and it's certainly not your typical for-profit. But it is a business and must be run on the basis of what fits that business model.
It is the most fascinating job in the world. It really is, because you are on the front lines. You're seeing the impact it has on people, and as you go higher in government, you become more separated from the impact your decisions make on the individual. Mm-hmm. City management, you're right there on the front lines, and so I think it's the most fascinating because you have all these challenges. It's this giant puzzle you're trying to put together. You're trying to get everybody to work together. You're trying to put together these strategies at 30,000 feet, but at the same time, you're also trying to implement them at 6 feet.
That's
and
right.
we all tend to operate at 6 feet.
When I was a pastor in St. Joseph, Missouri, way back, because, if a teenager in my church is now a retired school administrator, it's been a while, and he's been retired for a while.
Well, he retired at 23.
When I was there in St. Joe, as I recall, the city council and the mayor were elected. They ran the city, and they were elected as members of political parties. Mm-hmm. And one party was dominant in that area at that time, but a man from the other party was elected mayor. This was a radical thing to have somebody that wasn't of the usual party be elected mayor. Well, we had a local funeral director who was kind of a power broker. I mean, he had a lot of power in his neighborhood. He was always on city council. There was no way anybody of either party was going to uproot him. He had family, he'd served families for years, and he's a big man in the neighborhood. And he was a thorn in the flesh of not only the mayor of the other party, but of the rest of the council members. And it was fascinating to watch all this stuff playing out just in this little group, while the rest of the city is sitting out here losing packing houses.
Well, I'm wondering who's working on behalf of us.
Yeah. Who's on first and what's on second?
Yeah.
It was like a comedy of errors. When I was there, when I first moved there, Swift and Company had a huge packing house. Armour and Company had a huge packing house. Stockyards were huge. I found it entertaining just to go down and hang out in the stockyards and watch what went on, and had the commission building there where the guys that bought and sold the livestock they headquartered out of. And it was all that's gone, of course. But of course times have changed. But back then, when we thought some things needed some attention, city council and the mayor, they were all busy playing their game of politics. So anyway, let's go back now. Yes, Nancy, we're about to hear some wisdom here. Go ahead.
No.
You're going to hold on to it, or
I'll just hold on to it. It'd just be like.
All right, just hang on to it. Anyway, being city manager, you did something right after leaving city manager's job for a little bit to head up some special effort, did you not?
Well, when I retired from being city manager after 10 years, I continued to run a program called GiveFive.
There you go.
Which is first of its kind, as far as we know. It was developed when I was at the city, and now it exists at United Way of the Ozarks. And it is a program that takes retired baby boomers, teaches them about their own community. It's amazing how many people live in their community and don't really know what's going on in their own backyard.
That's right.
So we teach them about their own community, the good things in their community, also the challenges. It involves literally taking them on a bus, and we go visit 23 nonprofits in our community. Now, those 23 nonprofits are all working to address different issues in our community, and there are different volunteer opportunities. The idea is we're a civic matchmaking program, so we match people up based on their skills and their interests with volunteer opportunities in the community, because retiring baby boomers, we're turning 65 at the rate of 10,000 of us a day.
Whoa.
10,000 a day.
Whoa.
For 19 years, and I are one. So I'm in that group. But when you look around and you think about 10,000 of us a day turning 65, and if we assume a good portion of those will retire, sitting at home on the couch is probably not the best thing for you. In fact, sitting at home on the couch and isolating is the equivalent of smoking about 18 cigarettes a day.
That's right.
Physically. That's a study that has been done that's the health impact of isolating and loneliness. So the idea here is we can address a number of things at one time. So we can get the baby boomers off the couch, engaged in the community. The community benefits, the nonprofits benefit, because they get this amazing army of talent and skills
and
that are
experience.
attractive and experience. The people the nonprofits are serving benefit, because now the nonprofit has more capacity because of these skilled volunteers. So it's kind of this win-win-win. And we're finding that it's been unbelievably successful here, and we're now implementing it in Columbia, Missouri. They're getting ready to start their first class. Clayton, Missouri, which is a suburb of St. Louis, where Washington University is. We are in the process of working with Penn State University and WashU in terms of studying the impact it has on both the individuals who go through the program and also the impact it has on building capacity in the nonprofits. So if you think about what's happening in our labor market, in April of 2018, something happened that was kind of a blip on the radar screen. It was in the news briefly, and then it was gone. And that was the labor curve inverted, which means there are now more jobs available than there are people to fill them. We're just now beginning to see the impacts. Of course, the coronavirus is throwing everything a kilter, but if that had not happened, we're seeing these curves continue to diverge, and what that means is it's going to be harder and harder to recruit and retain talent. It's all about worker talent. So how will nonprofits compete against for-profit entities when we're trying to recruit talent? So if I'm looking for a financial analyst and a for-profit business is looking for a financial analyst, who's going to win? well, they're probably going to be able to pay more than I can.
Right, right.
So we're going to have to do a couple things as nonprofits. One, we're going to have to appeal to people who maybe have had a very successful career to that point and are looking to give back to their community in that final chapter, and they want to do something. So they might be willing to come work for a nonprofit, maybe at a lower salary. And we're starting to recruit some people like that. But then also there's people who have retired who maybe thought, when we ask them, what are you going to do in retirement, Paul? And you say, well, I'm going to fish every day. Well, guess what? You're not. Or I'm going to play golf every day. Or I'm going to clean the garage. Well, that's fine for the first 3 days. We hear from a lot of people that say the first 4 or 5 weeks of retirement were great.
That's right.
And then what? So they're seeking meaning and purpose in their lives, and how do they re-engage back into the community? And if you've been pick an occupation, you've been a successful accountant. You have the social aspects of working in an accounting firm probably. You've worked with people for years. That becomes part of your family. You've had a very successful career, and then you retire and it all turns off.
That's
all
right.
of a sudden. It's not like, it's sort of like the old Roadrunner cartoon where the Roadrunner would go 100 miles an hour and then all of a sudden stop. That's what it feels like. And I will tell you, it feels weird because I went through it. When I retired as city manager, on June 30th, I was city manager, and on July 1st, who was I? My entire meaning and the way people knew me in the community was city manager.
I want to jump in there, and Matt, you get ready. Acts Ministry has been around almost 27 years. Nancy and I started it that many years ago. We retired from it 5.5 years ago, 5 3/4 years ago. Anyway, we're still volunteers, which is what we're doing here. And Acts Media Group is a department of Acts Ministry. Now, Acts Ministry is a well-kept secret in Springfield, Missouri, and so is Acts Media Group. But we're all over the world, and this is home, and reaching millions a year. Who knows with the internet? Who knows? But Acts Media Group has been shown and promoted, rightly so, as a friend to the nonprofits, and they've done work to help people someone get a kidney transplant, for instance. He'd been on dialysis 11 years.
Wow.
Think of that. Now he has a transplant. He's still getting care and so forth. We have benefited the homeless, the hungry, veterans, disabled and otherwise, and people of handicaps, and autism has been a big concern for Acts Ministry. And Acts Media Group has become a friend to the nonprofits by promoting their causes at no charge. But in a little bit, Matthew Pearson may have a commercial for us of some kind. If not, I can always say a good word about Acts Ministry. Go ahead, Matt.
All right, thank you, Dr. Paul. Sorry, I'm doing 10 things at once over here today, but that's all right. That's what I do. So, like Dr. Paul said, we are reaching out to the world. We're not just reaching people in the United States. We got people in Germany. We got people in there's Pakistan. We got people everywhere. And our goal is to bring more programs like this to you guys. And what we're asking is for you to partner up with us in helping us to continue to grow, add programs, and add more content for you guys, more information, more entertainment. So if you like this show, be sure to like and share these videos. But you can also go to axmediagroup.com. Check out all the stuff that's on there. You can donate. You could set up a monthly donation or gift and partner with us in continuing to grow, like I said earlier. And also, you can check out the Real News Review. That's on there. That's an online newspaper. There's many, many good articles with lots of great information for you, as well as you talked about the Helping Hands Fund, which is a program that we have allocate money set aside for people who need these natural supplements to be able to survive. Helps to offset the cost for them, as well as, we're looking for ministers, and we're also promoting ministers and helping them stay connected. This is the Acts Television Network you're looking at right now. We also have axradio.com. jump on there, check out all the content. You can also see our past videos.
All right, and now Matthew
Yes, sir.
Dillon Pearson, if you wouldn't mind, we could stand to have the air back on because it's getting a little warm here in the studio.
You know, I figured you would say that.
Well, you figured right. Meantime, before we get back to some questions for Greg Burris, I want to point out, Greg, you'll find this interesting. You probably know all this stuff because you're so involved in the community. Figures from a while back of how much debt our government levels have. We know that our national debt is huge. Greene County, last accounting, had a debt of $121,817.77. Christian County, 139,000 plus. Taney County, home of Branson and all the music, 192,000, almost 193,000. Laclede County, where now if you're from Lebanon, you don't say Lebanon, you say Lebanon. You're from Lebanon, Missouri, over here east of Springfield. And for our international viewers and national people, Springfield, Missouri is in Missouri, not Massachusetts. And and it's not in Ohio, it's not in Illinois. We're in Missouri, we're in the Ozarks, we're the Queen City of the Ozarks, we're in the southwest quadrant of Missouri, and Missouri's in the middle of the world.
Simpsons don't live here.
So we're really in the middle of the world.
We're smack dab.
And also, Greg, my favorite nickname for Springfield, my adopted hometown, I've been here since '77,
Oh, I know
is
that's
Springburg, USA. Springburg, USA. Anyway, McDonald County, which is a very poor county money-wise, has $733,000, almost $734,000 in debt. Now, when we look at these kinds of figures, I have all of them from Southwest Missouri listed here. We look at this kind of debt, we begin to see why governmental units can only go so far in service. Like early on, you said that if you really ran the city of Springfield like a typical business, there'd be some services cut out.
Right.
So nonprofits become vitally important for the health, in spite of, even without a coronavirus,
Right.
for the overall health of the community in every way, socially, economically. If you took all the nonprofits out of Springburg, USA,
Whoa.
you wouldn't have much of a payroll left, would you?
You would not have the quality of life that would allow you to draw the workforce
That's right.
that keeps all the other businesses operating. So it's an intricate system.
That's why we've
And there
had.
are all these different cogs in this. There's reasons that these nonprofits exist.
That's why we've had Dan Prater on about 3 times. Dan is
Yeah.
he can tell you. In fact, he put out a booklet. I'm sure you have a copy, and it shows the impact of
Yep.
nonprofits economically on a community because of all the jobs they provide and services. Now, let's assume that they had that payroll, but they did it without having any services out there. There would be a world of hurt because our nonprofits are serving in so many different capacities.
Right.
So I'm pleased that Axe Media Group, which was put together by Dr. Jim Wining, who is the president of Axe, I turned the sword of leadership over to him coming up 6 years ago, and he's the one who has expanded Axe Media Group from a hard copy 12-page newspaper and an internet radio to all this online stuff and Axe Television Network and reaching more people. So it's the next development. I'm pleased that Axe Media Group is a friend to nonprofits, try to help them every way we can. That brings me to the United Way. You weren't retired very long until you
I had 9-day retirement, and then I
9
started with United Way.
You know, that's 9 more days than I've had.
Well, there you go.
And you talk about people turning 65 in a few months and shortly. In June, I'll be 85.
Oh my.
So I've been around the horn.
Well, you don't act like it. Start acting your age.
Yeah, I act 45 because up here in my head I'm still 45.
Yep.
My body says you got to be kidding, but in my head I'm 45. Anyway, you weren't retired very long. United Way, in blank verse, how widespread are United Way organizations across the United States?
Well, not only across the United States, around the world.
Is that right?
So United Way, there's a United Way worldwide that
Okay.
coordinates United Ways all around the world. So
Now that I did not know.
Just about any country has a United Way agency.
Now, let's narrow it down then to the state of Missouri.
Okay.
Do you have exchanges, connections with United Way and other communities like
Certainly.
whether it's Kansas City, St. Joe, Columbia, wherever?
Certainly. And we have statewide meetings.
Oh.
So there's we carve up the state.
Mm-hmm.
We're responsible for 14 counties.
Okay.
And then there's another United Way, for example, in Joplin. There's one in Jefferson City. There's one in St. Joe. There's one in St. Louis. There's one in Kansas City. So we all have our own sort of geographic region that we serve, and we're in constant communication, especially at a time like now with the coronavirus. If you can imagine, it's disruptive to all of us.
Yes.
And those of us who are healthy, it's disruptive in our lives. Imagine being the most vulnerable. Imagine being homeless and going through this. Imagine being homebound for
Right.
whatever reason. Imagine being an isolating senior who can't get out of the house and can't get groceries, and you're totally reliant on really the kindness of people and nonprofits to allow you to stay alive.
That's right. When you mentioned 14 counties, that's basically the 14 counties that I have a list of as to their indebtedness, which goes to show even more how important United Way is.
Yeah.
The administrative cost without United Way for all of the various nonprofits would skyrocket, in my opinion. I think United Way is a way to hold down some of the costs of operations, of promotion, one thing or another that happens.
We're able to do some things centrally. So you talk about operating like a business.
Right.
If you're a business, you want to centralize those things that make sense to centralize, that you can do better and more efficiently and most cost effectively centralized. So that's in essence the United Way model. So you have these 23 or 22 partner agencies that we work with, and there are a lot more United or partner agencies out there that are nonprofits doing great work in the community. We partner with 22. We work with them, and we're able to do things for them that keep their costs down.
That's what I'm talking about.
And so if they all had to go out, for example, and do all their own fundraising for the campaigns, and some of them do their own fundraising, but you'd see overall a total cost to the community go up. We're able to centralize some of those things. The things that we're doing for our partner agencies right now during the coronavirus response are helping them keep their costs down. We're also out helping them try and get supplies. We're helping them trying to raise money. We're trying to get them technology support so their workers can work remotely. I mean, it's just a variety. It's kind of this web of services that we provide.
I spent 2 lifetimes working with a major mainline denomination, and in that first lifetime I discovered that because of centralizing their efforts, they were able to take, for instance, $1 that was being raised for the mission field and get 90 cents of that dollar to the field. At that time, certain broadcast ministries were beginning to poke their heads up, and the research showed that it took 90 cents of every dollar that came in to run for their to administer what they were doing. Only 10 cents of the dollar got to the mission field. I don't think that has changed a great deal. I challenge our viewers, no matter what your age is, I challenge you to do a little research, because you see, you are the source of funding. Most nonprofits don't have a business that they operate. Their only business is service. Acts Ministry, the first motto that it had, I gave it, serving where needed. That was the whole intent, serving where needed. Dr. Wining kept that motto, but he added another one, doing the right thing. You don't hear anything in there about manufacturing or whatever, producing a product and so forth. So the only thing that keeps your community viable as a community is you. I remember, Greg, when small towns across North Missouri, their anchor was two things: a church and their school.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to show you how interconnected things can be, when railroads stopped running and the trucking industry came on, a lot of rail lines were abandoned, and the railroads were paying property taxes on right-of-ways that supported the schools. So the first step we had was from every town having its own school. It had grown up from one-room country schools into a school in a small town of 250 people. Then they became consolidated to survive. Then after a while they became reorganized. So as a result, we have the Springfield Reorganized School District number whatever. This is the kind of developments that happen. Why do they happen? Because somebody has to provide financing. And we're discovering that centralization is not all bad. Now, there are some sides to centralization that could be bad. You don't want too much power in the hands of any one entity. But somebody said a long time ago, and I think it was probably a politician, can't we all just get along?
It was Rodney King.
Can't we all just get along?
Yep.
So what we need to do, folks, of every age group, remember, we are the source for services in the community, whether it's through United Way or Acts Ministry and so forth.
The focus that we've got right now is turning people into owners of their community. If
There you go.
Nothing against car rental places, but you probably don't put premium gas in a rental car.
Probably
Right?
not.
You don't own it. It's not yours. You're renting it. And we have a lot of people who rent their community. And they sort of live in the community. They live on the community rather than in the community.
Right.
And what we're trying to do is get people to learn more about what's going on in their community and have some ownership of their community. Because once people own their community, they treat it differently. And this is not just about contributing money, but also getting involved, being part of the solution, volunteering time. We want people to own their community.
Well, when Nancy and I take a little car ride around over Springfield, sometimes we'll drive through a neighborhood where we'll see some illegal things happening, like automobiles parked in yards. We will see overstuffed furniture on front porches and that kind of thing. And it is difficult to police everything. If we reach that point where we have to have police enforcement of everything, we're in trouble. We need to take responsibility for our homes, for our neighborhood, for our community, for our Springburg, USA. And that's buying into it. Am I right?
Yep. We want people to feel like they own the community.
Now, I'm going to give you a couple of ideas here.
Uh-oh.
I remember before we had a United Way anywhere, World War II, I remember very well. I remember the community effort that went into that. I remember the community chest. That was the forerunner of United Way.
It was.
How about that?
Yep.
See, folks, experience. What can I say? Stay tuned. The happy hour is loaded with experience. But the community chest, and it took a while for people to understand that. But it evolved, and we have the United Way. And some very sophisticated fundraising methods too, I might add. I remember going to the movie on Friday nights. We called it the picture show, and my mom called it the Wood Haulers Show because that was the night when the tickets were cheapest, and you get to see two westerns with cartoons in the middle and the newsreel. We didn't have TV, so we followed the newsreels of the war, and at a certain point they would turn the lights up in the house after seeing Sister Kenny on screen, a Catholic sister who had this thing called March of Dimes to fight something called infantile paralysis. Nowadays it's called polio. Anyway, after this little promo on the screen, the lights would come up and they would pass around containers for us to put our dimes in. Dimes, from a community effort, beat infantile paralysis, which became known as polio. Polio has had to submit to the authority of the community, right? There are other things that if we all just can understand the importance of United Way, a lot of problems will have to submit to that kind of authority.
What was happening there was people had ownership of their community.
That's right, and they took responsibility. We had a patriotism about everything. We had signs of men rolling their sleeves up to go to work for Uncle Sam. We had cutouts of Uncle Sam pointing at you. Uncle Sam needs you. We had slogans: loose lips sink ships. But in the midst of all this, of World War II, Sister Kenny, the March of Dimes, the end of polio. When I was a pastor in north central Missouri back in the middle 60s, we would go to the local school and they'd give us like a little sugar cube and it had a drop of something on it, and we put it in our mouth and dissolved. It was the anti-polio vaccine. Now, there's some things we don't hear of. If you have problems in your community and you don't want to hear of them anymore, you want to be able to put them to bed someplace so that they never rise up to bite you, stick with those folks who are doing the job. United Way.
Get involved, yeah.
Get involved. Now,
there's a lot of people that have the attitude, somebody else will take care of that.
Right.
Right? I mean, somebody else will take care
Sure,
of this.
sure.
I don't have time for that. I've got to get the kids to soccer practice or whatever it is. We all have busy lives.
That's right.
But if we really want to make some headway on some of these issues, we all have to get involved and we all have to do our part.
That's
It may
right.
be a small part. During the coronavirus, we're asking people just to give $20. It's not that we only need $20. We need a lot more than that. But if everybody gave $20, think of what we would be able to do to serve the people who are the most vulnerable in our community and every community.
That's right. I noticed on television there are a number of charitable causes. They ask for $19 a month because up here 19 is not nearly as big as 20.
Right.
And I told a lay member of our church a number of years ago that there's a lot of power in a $20 bill. I'd say, if we were in here with some people and somebody checked and they dropped a $20 bill someplace on the parking lot, they'd leave our meeting, they'd go out in the parking lot to find that $20 bill. He started giving out $20 bills in parking lots to people that he recognized they had a need. It was amazing what a $20 bill will do. And so they're asking for $20. Yes, Matthew.
Dr. Paul, I was told to remind you that the first and one of the most helpful nonprofits in our adult autism program in Pennsylvania in 2011-2012 was United Way.
Is that right?
Yeah. He said you should remember.
Well, now that he brought it to my mind, I will remember.
I had just quit drinking and doing all that other stuff by that time. So
You were
I was
still in the
busy.
fog, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, I had just started working or coming to Acts ministry all the time at that point.
Well, in other words, what he's saying, that's Dr. Whining, I know.
It's Dr. Jim Whining, yes.
Yeah, he's reminding me that Acts Media Group has had a connection with United Way all the way back into some time spent in Pennsylvania.
That's wonderful.
So I'm right in line, Dr. Whining, letting people around here know, and in Pennsylvania and Texas, every place else about United Way. What do people do with their money? Why can't we get the government to take care of everything? Well, I have some figures that I use from time to time on this show. Top 1% of the income earners or recipients, some people have income they don't earn, top 1% pays 38% of the taxes. That's a small group of people out of 340 million, a small group of people. The top 5% pay 59% of the taxes. The top 10% pays 70% of the taxes. The top 25% pay 86% of the taxes. I'm sure Dan Prater probably has some figures involving nonprofits and where that income comes from. I happen to know United Way has or had a program where you would go into companies, industries, and one thing and another, and the employees were given an opportunity to have money regularly taken from their paycheck for United Way. Is that program still in effect?
That is our primary source of funding still today, is the payroll deduction.
All
so
right.
we go into organizations that allow us to come in, and we talk about our community, and we give the employees a chance to have just a couple of dollars taken out every week, every month, whatever their payroll cycle is. And so that's this idea of owning your community and being part of the solution.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it as easy as that.
Giving back to those who have given so much to you.
Yes.
I think about the neighborhood we live in. We live in a lovely neighborhood. We're blessed with a lovely home, and somebody made that possible.
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't build that neighborhood. I didn't build those streets. I didn't build the curbs and gutters. I didn't do any of that. But we inherited, in a sense, the labor of others and their profit. And I don't mind property taxes as long as they're reasonable. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I happen to have a friend that lives in a fast-growing county where they really have an inflated sense of what their taxes ought to be, and they got reevaluated, and sometimes property taxes get out of hand, but we do have recourse. We can always appeal and so forth. But I appreciate the neighborhood that we inherited. That's the thing. And we had 3 problem houses in the neighborhood, probably several blocks apart. The third one is now being solved so that our beautiful neighborhood will have no problem houses. That's a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. And be able to invest into that is to be able to continue it for years and years and years to come.
Right.
But somebody has to pick up the tab, and obviously a guy like Dan Prater might know what percentage of people are giving what into nonprofits. Which brings me to this. What is your budget annually?
Our budget is primarily our campaign, and so last year we raised about $2.6 million for our community. We will raise, our campaign doesn't end until March 31st, so just a couple of days from now. We'll get an updated number right after that. I think we're going to come in around $2.5 million.
Okay. Now, how does that compare with the budget of the city of Springfield?
Oh, not even close. So when I was city manager, I think our budget was $360 million. Now that included the airport, the art museum, all the parks. So I mean, it is literally, when you're the city, you're responsible for everything from A to Z. Literally, art museums and airports to zoos. And everything in between. That's police, that's fire services, everything. So that's about $360 million.
And streets and curbs and gutters.
Streets and curbs and gutters and sewers and all the other kinds of things.
All those glamorous things.
Yes.
Now, what kinds of work is United Way investing into nonprofits? What kinds of work?
So if you think about the types of nonprofits that we're working with, there's 22 of them. And we don't fund nonprofits. We fund specific programs within nonprofits.
Okay.
So that we fund 28 programs that those 22 nonprofits are operating.
Okay.
That can be everything from frontline homeless services, things like what the Kitchen is doing. Those who are familiar with Springfield, the Kitchen, Salvation Army, some of those kinds of frontline programs. But then also, things that you might not think about, like the Ozarks Counseling Center or the Literacy Council,
right.
Things like that. It's important to think upstream. Why would we be spending money on trying to make sure that kids can read and adults can read? Because that changes their ability to take care of themselves.
That's exactly right.
It resolves some of those downstream issues if you apply pressure upstream.
Right.
So we've got this interesting mix. Some are downstream. Some, in some cases, we're addressing the symptoms of poverty. We might be feeding people, helping to house them, work with the homeless, but we're also working upstream What are those things that we can be doing to give people the skills and the resources to take care of themselves so they don't need our help downstream? And so we're working in both of those areas.
I've had a concern, it struck me, I guess, a year ago about Salvation Army, bless their hearts. They were begun in England, of course, by a Methodist layman who became a street evangelist and had musicians playing. Matt's a musician, singer, songwriter, guitar player, and so forth, and not only preaching the gospel but helping the poor. And nowadays, not very many. I don't have any change in my pockets right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people don't.
I don't really hurt the Salvation Army.
Right,
red
people aren't
kettles.
carrying coins to put into the coin kettle, and I'm wondering somewhere along the line they're going to have to kind of shift gears a little, because if people aren't carrying coins, you don't have coins to put in the kettle. Many people aren't even carrying currency.
They're starting to, Salvation Army's starting to create this card dip so that you can take a credit card and you can say, I want to donate $5 and dip it in, and it takes $5 off.
I
of your
was
credit
wondering
card.
if they would get around to
Yes.
that, because they're going to have to do something.
So let me ask you a question. You get to ask me questions. Let
yeah.
me ask you and Nancy a question.
Okay.
If you had $1 to invest, would you invest it upstream on those kinds of resources that will help keep people out of poverty and keep them from needing things on the front lines? Or would you invest it downstream to address the immediate needs they have today?
Well, being
You only have $1 to invest.
yeah, being a clergyman and following the example in the New Testament, my money would go to meet the immediate need. However, if we both had $1, I would encourage Nancy to invest her dollar upstream. How's that for equivocation? Well, we're out of time. Is that right, Matt? Are we about out of
Yeah,
time?
we are actually. I let you go over a couple minutes
All right.
today.
Well, I'm not going to do my usual slow close then. I'm just going to be very cheery and happy and healthy, glad to have my health, but I will do this. Folks, it's a faith-based organization, but we don't do any preaching on this show to speak of. But a couple of weeks ago I did this, Matthew 11:28 through 30. This will be my close. The greatest teacher, according to 4 billion people who ever lived, said, "Come to me, all you that are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." With that, I say, see you next Friday on the Happy Hour. In the meanwhile, stay home, stay well, stay blessed. Bye-bye until then.